So Benton?
Okay. I started my professional career in academics. I came up to Canada from Silicon Valley. I grew up in California. I came up here to join the faculty in computer science at the University of Waterloo. Research that I had worked on with my colleagues became one of the first commercial companies that came out of the University of Waterloo. This was back in 1986. It was a Maplesoft company, a mathematical software. When people ask whether or not I have patient money, I point out to the fact that I was engaged in a 23-year-old startup. And so finally we had an exit a few years ago. And then since then what I've done is I've taken the dollars from that exit, made them green dollars by reinvesting in the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so these days I spend most of my time as an angel investor.
Marnie Walker. Like many of you, I started out in business. I did an MBA at Schulich. Then I spent the next 10 years in the corporate world in various industries, the music industry, the telecom, advertising. It was good. I would recommend it to everyone. I think it's a great place to learn good things and bad things. Things you want to do, things you don't want to do when you venture out on your own. So after about 10 years, I decided I was ready to take the big plunge and look for an opportunity. And I found an opportunity in the school bus industry. And so I got a contract to transport 8 busloads of students to school. Now, I was divorced. I had $500 in the bank, and I had a house that was heavily mortgaged. So needless to say, I was underfunded. But being an entrepreneur and deciding that I was going to do it anyway, I did it anyway. And I kept my corporate job for 5 years, and I invested everything I had in the business. 14 years later, the business had grown to where I owned 250 buses, 300 employees, and I won several awards. One of them was Canadian Woman Entrepreneur of the Year. So it worked. How did it work? I don't know, but if you want it bad enough, people talked earlier about what do you need? I think you need passion and just determination to just make it happen. After I won the award, and I think probably with some of the visibility of it, I was courted, which was a lovely thing to be done, by 2 multinationals who wanted to buy the company. So I did sell the company, Student Express, and went home with a big smile and a big fat check in my pocket because I owned 100% of the company, so that was also a nice place to be. So then, what do I do next? So I set out, like my friend here, and said, well, you know, really where my heart is and my love is entrepreneurship and business. My husband thinks I'm a real bore. We go to the beach and I take all my favorite business books, right? So really it is in your blood. So anyway, I set out, and one of the first things is I went and got interested in the angel investment area. Well, to my chagrin and disgust, it was kind of a bit of a free-for-all. So 5 colleagues and I, we started Maple Leaf Angels. Since the inception, we've invested, $7 million in 13 deals and had 4 exits. So that was fun for me. I also teach entrepreneurship. I hate to say it, at the Schulich School of Business. I'll whisper that. Again, it's fun. It's just wonderful to be involved with people out there, not just talking about it, but doing it. And last but not least, I, of course, being never learning, as my husband says, I'm a slow learner, I did another startup. So I now own a business center, which is a shared space, like an incubator center, except I don't give you $25,000 to come. So you can rent an office, you can rent a meeting room, you can just rent a mailbox. The offices start at $69 a month and then go up to whatever you need. Right around the corner at 401 Bay. I started November 2008, so I get an F for timing. So after a year of blood and tears and sweat, anyway, the business turned around and it's doing really wonderful. So I'm looking to expand. So if anyone would like to come and visit me, that would be great. I'm right around the corner. And so through that, the reason I shared a little bit of the journey is through that process, I've done due diligence. I've had due diligence done on me. I've been through the process many times. I find it frustrating. I find it hard work, and it's something that you really never ever want to do again. But it's one of those things that you will find you do many times, and the better you learn it, and the more efficient you make it, and the better you get at it, the easier it will be for you to sell your concept, sell your business, and raise money. So while Yasmin said, "Oh, Marnie, you're talking on due diligence," I thought, "Oh, isn't that a crazy topic?" But the truth is, it's all about due diligence, and so I'm hoping that you enjoyed the session with all of us here.
My name is Jeff Dennis. I think most of you were here for the last session, so I'm not going to kind of give you my background again, except to say that Sean neglected to put up on the screen another book that you must read. I wrote a book called Lessons from the Edge. It's a collection of stories by entrepreneurs of their biggest mistakes and the lessons that they learned. And part of my journey, aside from sort of all the things I told you about in my first session, is that I've spent a lot of time sort of traveling, speaking, and teaching and talking about entrepreneurship. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I've been almost everywhere in the world, save South America, speaking about entrepreneurship. In fact, I went to the Entrepreneurs Organization chapter in Kathmandu, Nepal, and spoke there at one time. So I've had an interesting journey, both in terms of business and education. I've invested myself. I've been an angel, and even as a young lawyer, I was involved in doing a lot of due diligence from the other side, from the investor's perspective. So I have sort of both perspectives on the whole question of due diligence.
Hi, I'm Paul Cotter. I'm president of NAO Ontario, which helped to organize this little gathering. And my role here is just to try and evoke and provoke, hopefully, something that you can take away. And to begin with, I guess from a communications point of view, which is where I start, due diligence sounds so diligent, doesn't it? It sounds like, ooh, this is the stuff you have to do, not the stuff you really want to do. But it's about knowing your audience. And I hope that after today you're really coming to know the audience that you're going to meet in a year or 18 months when you are actually asking for startup capital. And coming to them with a nice, neat file drawer full of the proof that you are what you say and what you mean. In other words, being ready for due diligence is going to be the thing that ultimately animates your company, I hope. Anyway, without further ado, I guess we'll get started with the first question, which is for everyone, for each panelist, describe your best and worst experience on the giving or receiving end of due diligence, the war stories. Benton?
I'll start. If everybody can hear me without the microphone, I would prefer not to use it. So can you hear in the back row? Great. I once gave a talk in Malaysia. They told me that people in Indonesia really enjoyed the remarks. So I'm used to lecturing in a lecture room full of about 500 or so people. In terms of war stories, we've gone through so many due diligence efforts and seen so many companies with the Golden Triangle Angelnet that it's easy to come up with a few very good examples of due diligence efforts that I hope that you folks can emulate. And I'll give you some examples of some terrible war stories, things that went badly. So in terms of the good ones, the ones that really sort of sailed by fairly smoothly with almost minimal efforts come from companies who have a desire to share with us in a very forthright way all of the information about the company. Because they understand that when they invite us in as investors, they're really inviting us in as their partners and as their co-owners. And so there's nothing that they should be hiding from us. We need to see everything about the company, good and bad. We're going to find out anyway. But the more that you try to prevent some information from being shared with us, the harder and the deeper we're going to dig. Because we sense that there's something that's gone amiss that you don't want to tell us. And the best companies that have come to us are ones that have all the documentation prepared, collected, organized, so that we can go through it fairly easily. Now, I think, Jeff, you had prepared a list of documents that would be in a typical due diligence checklist. It's fairly long. It's about, what, 18 pages or so? And so we try to prep companies about the level of diligence that we're about to enter with them as we start this process. And sometimes we have to tell them, it's a long list of things that we're asking for, right? And there are good reasons why we're asking for all this information. We want to understand everything about the team, about your product, about the organization of your company, about hidden skeletons, about things that you may not be aware of. We're gonna work alongside you and help you uncover some of that stuff. And the companies that have sailed through due diligence are generally ones that have done it before with other investors, and they come completely prepared. In the case of one company, they just handed a DVD to us. Everything was on there. Employment agreements, past agreements with other investors, the capitalization table, very well organized, their patents, everything. Then we run into companies that don't quite have everything organized, they're missing stuff, and so we're asking, okay, where are these employment agreements? We don't see them. We want to understand what you're liable for in terms of claims that some of your employees might have with your company. And they have to dig them up, or they have to create them. So that delays the entire process. At the best, I would say the due diligence process can be completed within about 3 weeks to 4 weeks. In some cases, we've seen it drag on for close to a year. Now, in those cases, we probably should have cut it off and said, you know, this is really going nowhere. But some of our investors persisted, not because the process was painful, but they persisted because they believed in either the social value that the company was trying to provide, they believed in the mission of the company, and so they persisted with due diligence. In one case, after about a year, a company was able to successfully raise about $2 million. It came from amongst a syndication of angel groups, including one in the US. And so that sort of persistence on our part paid off. But that's really sort of the exception rather than the rule.
Marnie?
Well, I echo your thoughts a lot because I found that the due diligence that I was going to talk about in my worst example was basically a situation that was actually one of the first angel investments that I looked at. I went with a group of angels, not part of a well-organized organization. There was no spokesman for the angels, no preparation done on either side, and it was a fiasco, an absolute fiasco. It was a waste of time for the company, and it was a waste of time for the angels. And so I really think that I can't echo more about how important it is that you understand the process and be prepared. And it's strange, you know, I've been through a lot of due diligence, and I've been through a lot. I find them still, as I said, very unpleasant. But the one that I went through when I sold my school bus company was, I think, one of the best. And I'll share it with you because it's a little bit unorthodox. I had 2 suitors, so I could really have a lot more control over the process, and it's typical. And so I decided that I wasn't going to provide anything but high-level information until I had, I was sure that the vendor or the acquirer was serious. And so I prepared the information in advance, and following that, we basically did the term sheet, letter of intent, and most of the purchase and sale agreement before I even provided any detailed due diligence information. And then what basically I did is I asked for a list of what was required. I put it together. We met in a hotel room. I didn't allow any copying or duplication of materials. Nothing could go out of the room. And they brought their army in, and the diligence was done in 5 days. So while I was told that was a rather unorthodox approach, what it really highlighted for me, and what I really have taken forward both as an angel and an investor, is that you provide high-level information ahead. You assume nothing is confidential, because nothing in this world is confidential in this kind of a forum. And you're very prepared, and you focus on exactly what the angel and what your audience is looking for, and that's what you provide. Then you proceed to the deal stage with obvious the conditions that anything you put forward can be substantiated with the detailed due diligence. That way, I think it saves time and effort on both sides and protects an entrepreneur, protects your competitive information, and certainly speeds up the process. So that's my best and worst. Jeff?
Well, I just came off the worst. I got involved in a company. It was a workout situation. He got himself into some pretty deep trouble, and I got brought in to kind of clean up the mess on behalf of the investors. And we were selling, it was a renewable energy company. We were selling a wind farm to an investor. And the agreement that they had negotiated had a lot of conditions in it that took a long time to satisfy. So the effect of it was to give them almost an unlimited opportunity for due diligence, because these conditions were unfulfilled, and then every day they would, peel back the onion a little bit more and a little bit more, and there'd be more questions. They want to see these documents, and this thing went on almost for a year. And I guess the lesson that came out of it was about the agreement in the first place. Now, it's a very different situation where you're selling a business, which was Marnie's case, versus an investment situation, because the investor's ultimately going to write a check or not write a check depending on whether they're satisfied with the due diligence, and they typically have very broad discretion. They give them a complete out if they're unhappy for whatever reason. So I think in the case of a sale, you've got a tighter agreement with deadlines and so forth. That's a little easier to limit the due diligence, whereas with the financing, I think it's a lot more difficult. But I think the moral of the story that I heard from Marnie was really that it was having some bargaining power, right? So if you're out there and you've got one investor and you're desperate for the money, then you really kind of have to pull down your pants and do whatever they say, and it is what it is. But if you're in the fortunate position where you've got a bit of a beauty contest going on, which is kind of what we heard from Marnie, then all of a sudden you can set the rules. And you can, limit it in the way that we've heard. So that would be my sort of observation. The other thing I would say is that, due diligence and your preparation for due diligence, I think, is a little bit of a reflection on you and your sort of mindset and organizational skills and so forth. And it's kind of like, they say about a restaurant, if the bathroom in the restaurant's clean, then that the kitchen's clean, kind of thing. Well, it's kind of the same way with you guys. If your due diligence preparation is a disaster and a mess, like what's going on behind the scenes? And it just is a huge red flag. So at the end of the day, preparing for due diligence sounds like this big, ominous, onerous obligation, but you should have all this stuff at your fingertips in any event. You should be able to put your hand on these contracts, on these agreements, on these documents, these important documents. You should know where they are. They should be at your fingertips. You have an organized filing system, whether it's digital or paper or both. And it should be backed up, and it should be off-site, and all the things about that. So I just don't see due diligence as a big deal unless you just aren't very organized.
Well, thank you all. Our next question actually will evoke some points that I think from each of you that bear some repeating here, that bear to be taken away. Your top 3 tips for startups preparing for due diligence, like what comes to the top of the mind, Benton?
One is to bring the attitude that you are going to be forthright and willing to share. We've had people approach us and say, well, I've got this great idea, but I'm not going to tell you about it. I just need your money. Or to basically leak out parts of it and leave us hanging. Don't act coy. Also, don't try to play various angel groups against each other. In fact, it's almost always the case that the amount of money that you're trying to raise is beyond especially if it's a larger round, it's beyond the capability of any single investor or any single angel group. We've been asked recently to fill rounds that are at the stage of in the area of about $1 to $2 million. That's beyond the capability of any one angel group, and so you're going to have to bring together multiple investors and get them collaborating with one another. So don't try to play groups off one another thinking that you might have an advantage. And in fact, these groups will talk amongst themselves. And so you sort of can't keep them away from each other anyway. One of the investee groups that had approached us recently has said, you're the preferred group that I'm going to be talking to, but I'm also going to be talking to a government funding agency. I'm not going to tell you who it is, however. And told the other group the same thing. It was the Investment Acceleration Fund. So Dan Mathers, who runs that fund in the Waterloo area, is a colleague of mine. And he was told, that this company is talking to an angel group. And he said, Benton, are you that angel group? I said, yes. Are you that other company that he doesn't want, other group that he doesn't want us talking to? And so we were having a laugh about it. Guess what? We're talking anyway. We trust one another. We trust each other's opinions. And so we go to each other and not only do we collaborate, but we help each other with due diligence. And so it's futile for these investee companies to think that they can be coy or that they can create some sort of a competitive advantage for themselves by trying to take these groups, funding groups, and play them off one another. So be forthright, try to get everybody involved. They bring various, they bring their respective strengths to the table. When we work with other angel investors, we respect the fact that there are different perspectives. We value that because, in fact, we will look at a deal from 10 different pairs of eyes. And we've got investors who are experts with real estate, with insurance, with law, with accounting, with IP protection, with entering the US market, import, exports, technology. And so when we gather together and we bring our respective strengths into the same deal, all of us feel more confident that this is the right deal for us if there's a nod from each person at the table.
Marnie, your top three?
I think the first one is to be prepared, and by being prepared, I put my due diligence stuff when I sold the company in boxes. Fortunately, you don't have to do that today. But I would electronically have all the information that you need for any kind of due diligence activities, whether it's angels or just your credit line at the bank, so that you're in a position to quickly put together the information that's needed. I think it certainly is more efficient, saves you time, and I don't know about you, but having done 2 startups, what I never had was any time, and therefore I never had any sleep. So I really would encourage, putting this together, putting electronically, keeping it so that you can just download it and cut it, paste, put it together. The other thing is I really would strongly recommend that you, in any sort of negotiation process, that you can attempt to control and manage the process as much as you can. Depending on how much control you have, you are more successful. But I think in terms of meeting with an angel group, I think it's perfectly legit to say, what are you looking for? What stages? What are the time frames? What are the expectations? Because I think that's fair. I think it shows the angel group that you're serious about it, your time is valuable, and that you're organized and are serious about moving forward. I think it reflects good in the company, and also I think it gives you an idea of what you need when you need it, because you also have a startup to run in the meantime. So I think those are the big 2. And I think the other one is financials. I don't know about financials, but you need to have them. You have to be current. You got to be on top of them, and you have to understand them, and you have to just be able to negotiate them, because people are investing in your company for a return, and financials are huge. And often you get so busy you don't have time to do that. Well, that's one thing you need to really, really know how to do is where you stand, what you've got, what you need, and where you're going from there.
Thanks, Marnie. Jeff?
The problem with coming last is that they've said all the good tips. But, I would say that the first thing is most of the people in the room, I gather just from talking to people in the break, are startup situations. So I think it's about, starting with good habits, good record keeping, good filing, whether it's digital or otherwise, just like start now, because you don't want to be a year and a half from now when you've got all this paper and it's, you know, disorganized, and now you're going to have to sort of piece it together. So I think it's good to start with the discipline now, just in terms of your record keeping. Secondly, I would say that, you know, it's about, again, appearing organized. So the better you look, it's, you know, first impressions or whatever you want to call it. So if you've got that due diligence list and it's, you know, categorized by subject matter, whether it be intellectual property or real estate or employment or whatever the category, and it's, you know, so that's section 1, and then it's 1.1 is this contract, and have, you know, almost like a table of contents. And so you can sit down with the investor and go through with them in advance. Look, here's what I've got, here's the way it's laid out, you know, here it is on the CD, or here are the boxes, or whatever it is, you know, go crazy, and if you need anything else, let me know. Well, that's a very different opinion, a first impression, than, you know, being sent to go find this agreement, and can you get this, and where's that, and I didn't understand this, and you're constantly playing catch up as opposed to being proactive, and that'll set a very good tone. And then coming back to the financial side, you know, it's for startups, a lot of it's, you know, the financials are projections. So I think I mentioned this in the first piece that I was in earlier. You know, focus on the reality of the assumptions and focus on the detail, and as Sean said, sort of work up instead of work down in terms of building your projections. Because the reality and how much sense it makes, again, will leave that initial first impression that's could make or break the opportunity.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Well, we're making good time here, and we have 3 more questions that I'm going to address each to a pair of you, if I may. The next question is, how do you suggest companies handle multiple investing parties? And that's for Marnie and Benton.
So these days, the various angel groups in Ontario tend to collaborate with each other. We don't see ourselves as being competitors. And in fact, there is this level of trust that has emerged amongst the various angel groups, with York Angels, with Maple Leaf Angels, Angels One down in Hamilton, and I see my friend from, and also Sandy Robertson from Georgian Bay Angels. We work with one another, and so when we see a good deal, we tend to spread it around to the different angel groups. So collaboration is the one is the way that we tend to work these days.
I agree, and I think in that note, I think it comes down to something that's really fundamental, and that is honesty and trust. And I think you need to be upfront about what you're doing in terms of other funding, and I think you need to make sure that going forward, you don't have to tell everything you know about every dark secret in your personal life, but you certainly need to be upfront about what you're doing in your business, what your expectations are, and other people that you're dealing with. And I think then you're setting us up for an experience where, in fact, you know, you have multiple groups working together, helping to put the money together for you to grow. Also, typically with these investments, there's usually a chairman, a key person at each group. Which is huge, because you're not dealing with 20 angels, you're usually dealing with 1 or perhaps 2. So I think it's very important to be upfront and do that in all your dealings.
And I should also point out that just simply because one angel group may decide that it's not the right deal for that particular group, it doesn't mean that what you're offering is a bad deal. They may just simply decide that it's not a good fit for the members of that group, and in fact, they can send you along to a different group with their recommendation.
It's also, just if I could interrupt, it's also worthwhile, you know, searching for the champion. I mean, there's going to be one member of the angel group that's going to be the champion, and that are going to take the lead. So even though you're negotiating with multiple parties, if you can see a situation where you've got that champion and have that individual sort of advocate your case with the group, at least you're dealing with one person on a consistent basis, and then as others, you know, get involved, they may have certain specialties, whether it be IT or law or accounting or whatever, that come in for specific parts of the due diligence. at least you're kind of having one relationship and you're negotiating with one person and not having sort of multiple negotiations. The other thing I would say is make sure that you have some conception of what the deal's going to look like. You know, talk to people, talk to angels, talk to professors, talk to lawyers, accountants, whatever, just to get a sense of what the lay of the land is, because you know you're going to get one opportunity to sort of set the tone. They're going to do whatever they want to do, but you know, in my experience with negotiations, you know, establishing that expectation starts the process, and it's not just about price and value, but it's about, you know, board representation and decision making and all of those things. So if you've thought it out and you put on the table a reasonable proposal, then the rest kind of will fall together a little easier. It'll get negotiated, but it'll and refined, but at least, you know, they're not going to be dealing with a situation where they're just going to have to throw it away.
So if I can attempt to summarize that, no entrepreneur ever truly lost an opportunity by being honest about that they were contemplating other investing partners. Is that correct? Would that be safe to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, also just to comment on that, in Canada, there's just a shortage of money. I mean, the Maple Leaf Angels is a very well-respected, successful group of people in their own right, and without, you know, being sort of critical, but $7 million over all those years is just not a hell of a lot of money. So, and they're maybe one of the flagship angel groups in the country. So, you know, you're going to need to syndicate this if you're raising any more than $500,000.
We have a question.
Yes, thank you. My question would be, when when entrepreneurs or business people are looking for money and they're proposing something to the angel that's reasonable, how should they propose their evaluation? How should they evaluate their company? Because they always get it wrong. So how would you recommend they value their company when they're presenting to you so they can offer it to you?
In my experience, there's industry metrics that are kind of accepted. So, you know, you may take a couple different approaches. So you may do a high valuation based on a multiple of earnings, or you may do a lower valuation and have it well rationalized, so that at least when the discussion comes up, you're talking about metrics and parameters instead of pie in the sky thinking. It's very hard when you don't have customers and you don't have sales. You know, I had a conversation in the break. Somebody said that they got a $50,000 investment for 2.5% of the company. So that means the company's worth $2 million. There's nothing like a little arm's length transaction to set the valuation.
Okay.
You have a question?
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
What was the shortest time period that you invested in a company? Let's say if you met them today and they pitched something to you, did you give them money right off the bat, or did you wait it out, go and dig?
I think a reasonable, sort of I view, you know, 8 weeks is a great. If you can get a deal in 8 weeks, I think that's great. I think if you can't get a deal in 4 months, I think you should walk away and say this isn't going to happen. But you know, things just take time, and I think the better prepared you are, the fastest it can be. It could be 6 weeks if everything's in order.
Let's say, for example, we were to launch in September and we needed the money, I don't know, within the next 2-3 weeks to get ready for that time period.
January 1 launch.
Yeah, should ask earlier.
Right. I would say that 2 to 3, expecting a deal would close in 2 to 3 weeks is unrealistic.
And if you don't have your money, you don't have a launch.
Well, and having
Love money, love money.
yeah, well, I was going to say, having said that, there are, you know, bridge financing type of arrangements that you can organize with, you know, friends, families, and fools, which will come with, you know, a huge price. So the idea is, you know, you'll raise some money now and it'll get taken out when the real money comes in in 90 days. That's very expensive money. It's often almost impossible to find, but it's out there from time to time.
I'll move on. Oh, yes, sir. Sir, can I get you to stand up and sort of project a little? Thank you.
Go. So the question is, I know you guys are interested in sales and VCs and angel ventures themselves, would you consider the letter of intent as something that you would consider as some advanced sales, or are you actually interested in an actual sales?
No, anything that's proof of concept, letters of intent, contracts, even just correspondence with companies you're dealing with. A sale is the best, and even better than a sale is a paid sale. But anything that you can do to demonstrate that in fact a sale is in the works is what's needed. And the other thing is huge. Who's the most important customer you'll ever have? Who can tell me? The first one. Why? Proof of
Take the
concept.
risk, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Proof of concept shows that your product's viable, that there's a market, shows what price point. The other thing, you can usually lever your first sale for what? Testimonial. Huge. First customer. So that's why the whole sales is such an important focus.
If you don't have one of these first customers in a bag already, what we may ask you to do is that we may ask you to identify for us your strongest prospects, and we will interview them. We will also encourage you to take those strong prospects and try to get conditional POs from them. If you develop this product the way that you're going to develop, will that result in a commitment from them in terms of a purchase?
We have to press on because we've only a few more minutes, so I'm just going to ask one more question, which in fact, Benton and Marnie, you have anticipated a bit. When do you draw the line? When do you just say no in due diligence? A reasonable boundary. Benton, you mentioned with an angel champion really pushing, it went as long as a year in one case.
That's right. And so that was really sort of the exception. I mean, if it were not for one or two angels that had really pushed for that, I would have advised our investment group to just simply cut it off after about 4 months or so. And so that goes in line with your advice as well. I would say probably most due diligence efforts, if they're going to go and proceed to a signed deal, they should close within 3 to 4 months. That's at the outset. I've seen them close sooner. They tend to be the exception when they're about a month or so. That's when you've got all your ducks lined up in a row. You've been through the process. You know how to work with investors. They can close in a month, but that's unusually quick.
And I might just add this idea that Jeff brought up about a champion. I think this is huge. And actually, Maple Leaf Angels this year, all the deals that we're bringing forward, they're all being sponsored by one of our members. Because we feel it's just so important that before a company comes forward to an angel group, that there's been considerable amount of work done and research done, and that one of our members feels strongly enough that they're prepared to invest before it's brought forward. So it's very important, I think, when you're looking for money, that you start to build relationships. And specifically, that goes generally in business, obviously, I think relationships, but certainly in the funding arena, it's huge.
Yeah, and I would just to comment, in my experience with the Maple Leaf Angels, it's been a few years since I've been to a meeting, but I recall that the deals that had a member get up and do the introduction typically went to the next stage. They may not have received the investment, but it has incredible credibility if you've got a champion in the organization who gets up and introduces the startup, gives the brief introduction before you do your 15 or 20 minutes of fame. And if you're coming in cold, obviously you got to wow them, but I think it's a lot harder.
Yeah, and one of the tips that I do give companies that do present before an angel group is if you can find that champion and get them to come to the meeting and sort of speak to about the company and why they invested, that speaks volumes, because investors tend to believe in other investors. And it could be an investor from a different group or from outside of any of the organized angel groups. But to have someone stand up and say, you know what, I believed in this company so much that I put $100,000 of my own money in, that will tend to drag other investors in.
We have one more question that's kind of actually interesting to me because it's so recent. and not everyone may necessarily be aware of it, but the question of online data rooms where the information, the due diligence information is in one central place that perhaps can be password protected, if I understand the concept correctly.
Yes.
Now, disclosure, as you've heard repeatedly today, is kind of an issue. So I'd like to ask your opinion of these particular fora.
It's a fairly new concept in terms of having deals work through a online deal room. We've only seen maybe about 1 or 2 deals over the past year where an online data room was used. They're certainly very convenient. We've also seen documents collected on CDs or DVDs. That's also another very convenient way of passing information around. Once we had asked a company to provide all the documents that we needed. They flew down from Ottawa with 10 binders, 10 2-inch binders. So that gives you an idea about the amount of paper that's sometimes involved in terms of revealing all the things that we need to know about a company. It's awkward to pass around a set of 10 binders. It's much simpler to either pass around a DVD or to gain access to an online deal room.
Actually, one of Maple Leaf Angels, we're moving towards this online data room. We're just in the processes of implementing a whole new web platform and web strategy. Security is a huge issue, but we feel that this is the way to go, and that all of our deals down the road will be done where the information is available on the web. However, again, I must stress there'll be different levels of members. Different levels of information depending on where in the due diligence process you are, and depending on the particulars of the deal. Because I think it's very important that we are in it together as partners and that we protect your information.
If I can just attempt to amplify that a little bit, it sounds like what Maple Leaf Angels is proposing is more of a one system for them alone. Are there any sort of proprietary systems out there that you've heard of? I mean, would Gust qualify?
We've looked at a lot of the off-the-shelf packages, and actually we're modifying an existing one for our use, but I have to stress that even the use as we go down the road, one of the things we're looking at is that this whole issue of coterminous investing. Is that our plan is that we feel we need this for our members and what we're doing, but we plan to share this with the other angel groups so that they're in a position to be able to access a deal that they're co-investing in. It's just simply will be our platform, our way of collecting the data and sharing it.
Jeff, would you care to?
No, I've heard, I don't have a lot of experience with online data rooms. I've actually seen it, with an FTP site in the past where something as simple as that. But it's very convenient, and I don't have any sort of great objection to it, provided the security's there.
Yeah, and speaking about security and levels of confidentiality, it doesn't have to be one size fit all. For the majority of the people who participate in the due diligence efforts, in fact, our investors are not asked to sign an NDA, nor do they expect to, if it's general business information. However, there may be patents that you have or patents that you're filing that are highly confidential, and for that I think it's only fair that any of our members who actually examine those patents or the source code would sign an NDA. And so maybe subgroups will sign a special NDA with you in order to get access to source code.
Thank you. I think we've come just about to the end of our allotted time. I know I'm going to get the wink in a moment. So just want to thank you all for providing your thoughts and sharing your best and worst.